I'm Ed Wilkinson, and this is On the Block. Today we're on the north side of Williamsburg in Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish, and we're going to be talking to the pastor, Msgr. Jamie Gigantiello. Msgr, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much.
You have an interesting story because before you were ordained, you actually had a whole career of its own, didn't you? I mean, you weren't ordained until you were 36.
Yes.
What were you doing before that?
Well, as everyone knows, I was breaking bread.
Get a plug right in, a shameless plug, right?
As you know, I went to the Culinary Institute and I worked for about 10 years in hotels and restaurants. And I worked at the Carmel, the Intercontinental, and then I taught for 3 years at Erasmus Hall High School, cooking, hotel management. So it was interesting. I had a career, a background before I entered the seminary.
Well, where does that interest in cooking come from?
Well, I guess being Italian first, and we like to eat, so if you want to eat, you cook. But
yeah.
Everyone in my family liked to cook. My mother, my father, you know, even my sister when she got older, my brother, we're all cooks. We like, I guess because we like to eat, but we're always interested in cooking. And when I was a kid, I used to love to bake cakes, you know, and the icing, I used to play, and, you know, so I enjoyed doing that. But then when I was in high school, I worked for a caterer in Astoria, Buzzio's Caterers, and I worked there for a while. And during high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I'm still not sure what I want to do when I grow up, you know. But anyway, the owner's brother worked at the Culinary Institute. He was one of the administrators up there. So they would come down on the weekends, and then the boss's daughter got married, and all the chefs came down, and I really got interested, you know, in doing all the carving and all the baking and all the food preparation. So when I graduated high school, I went right into the culinary. So I went there for 2 years. And when I finished, graduated, it was a 2-year program, I went to work at the Carlisle. And while I was there, I went to get my BA in Business Administration too. So then...
Now, you were a maître d' at one time too, right?
Yes, I only worked in the kitchen for about maybe 6 to 8 months. As you know, I love to talk. I'm a people person. If you
that came right out, I guess. Right.
So, you know, the kitchen was too hot for me. So I went into the front of the house, as we call it. And you know, I started as a waiter, then I became a maître d', I became a captain, and I worked in the Cafe Carlisle where Bobby Short used to, you know, play every Saturday night. And then after that, I went to the Intercontinental as a restaurant manager, and then I was in catering for a while. And you know, I did all of that stuff.
And what was your specialty when you were in the kitchen?
Well, I like baking. I did like to bake, but also, you know, I love also cooking, especially Italian food. I guess I'm a little biased. But I love to go to different restaurants, taste different things, and I go home and I prepare it myself. And the ingredients, the things I don't like, I just omit.
Now, how much cooking do you do now? I mean, you run a pretty busy life, I know, and you're always running here and there. But you still get a chance to go in and try your hand in the
Well, I have
kitchen?
to be honest with you. I do cooking a little bit more now since, you know, when I entered the seminary, I didn't cook for a while. But I did work on the weekends sometimes to make a little extra money. So I did a couple of catering jobs, especially around churches. I did confirmation dinners for a lot of parishes. But I really didn't do it after I was ordained. But when I got to Bay Ridge, as you know, the first thing I started was the Taste of the Ridge. Yep. And I got all the restaurants, and it's still going on today, 24 years later. And, you know, so I did a lot of organization and using my cooking skills in my ministry. And then, you know, about 6 or 7 years ago, when Nanette asked me to do Breaking Bread, I got a little bit more interested in cooking again. I got out all of my old recipes. And, you know, in the summertime, I like to cook. I have a place out in Long Island that I go to for a little R&R, but that's where I cook. And I have a little pizza oven, so I enjoy doing that.
Now, how about Erasmus Hall? You were a teacher at one time.
Yes. After I left the Intercontinental, I was still discerning. You know, all during those years, I wasn't sure, you know, if this really I wanted to do this. And the priesthood was always in the back of my mind. I was always involved in the church, even in my working years in the hotel business. So it was always in the back. So I wasn't sure. So rather than staying that hustle and bustle of the restaurant, working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, I went to work at Erasmus Hall High School. Not saying that's easy being a teacher, but the schedule was a little less, and I was able to devote more time to the church. I was missing out on, you know, the weekends and Sundays and doing retreats and being involved in parish activity because of the work schedule. So I went to Erasmus, and that freed me up to work more in the church and to be involved more in the church ministry. And then that's really where I had my final calling or decision to go into the seminary. I'll never forget, I didn't want to miss out on my summer pay, so I never said I was going to the culinary. So I went the first day of school, of the school year. I got my check for the whole summer, and then I went right to the seminary that afternoon.
At Erasmus, you also started a little cooking club,
Yes.
right?
Well, we actually had a restaurant in the school. I mean, Erasmus is a famous high school.
Yeah.
It was one of the first high schools in the country, and the first high school that had a dormitory. And they had an old building, the original building where the students went to school and slept there. And when I got there, it was the bicentennial of the Erasmus Hall building and the original building. So they renovated and they restored that building to its original form, and they had the installation of the new chancellor, Chancellor Green, who was in for a while, and so all that was going on. And I got involved in that, and then after that, they said it would be good to have a restaurant in the school where the kids would actually prepare the meals, and the teachers came, they paid like $5, and they got a 3-course meal. So we did that twice a week. So it was really a hands-on, and we had a restaurant right in the school, and the kids really enjoyed that hands-on activity.
Now, you mentioned the Culinary Institute where you went. That building itself was actually a seminary at one time, right? Tell us about that.
Well, it was St. Andrew's on the Hudson. It was a Jesuit seminary.
Seminary.
We always
there is a cemetery there.
There is there, right, it is. And so what happened was that when it closed, the Culinary Institute, which opened 2 years earlier in New Haven, Connecticut, moved to St. Andrew's in Poughkeepsie. And it was interesting because I always say maybe that's where I had my second calling was up there, you know, to the priesthood, because you know, the chapel was called the Great Hall. The sacristy behind the chapel was the banquet kitchen. The wine tasting was in the smaller chapel in the morning, you know, downstairs. So, I mean, it was interesting because I was involved in the church to go through all of this. So it was very interesting.
And people can come there and they can buy meals there at the school, right?
At the culinary, sure. At the time I was there, we only had 2 restaurants, and we had a diner, a real old-fashioned diner. Now they have about 6 or 7 restaurants, and they've expanded. When I entered, it was only there 2 years, so we had only the original building. Now there's other buildings on campus, there's a sports center, so it's much, much larger today.
And just a little footnote of history there, in the cemetery is the very famous Jesuit philosopher Teilhard de Chardin.
Yes, he is
right?
buried there. Yes, and we would go there at night and we walk through the cemetery. So, you know, God works in strange ways. Maybe he was telling me not to get too far away from the church.
God, that's great. Well, we're going to take a quick break right now, but we're going to come back then and talk about this calling, where it all came from. And so you stay right with us. We're coming right back to On the Block. Welcome back to On the Block. I'm Ed Wilkinson with Monsignor Jamie. Today we're on the north side of Williamsburg, and we've been talking about your career as a chef and a maitre d' before you decided to go into the seminary. But you said something before. You said that the idea of priesthood was always there in the back of your head. So I guess you grew up in the church, your family was active Catholics, and you must have been around the parish quite a bit, huh?
Yes, yes, no, yes. Yes, of course, you know, I was baptized Catholic. My family was Catholic, and we grew up in Long Island City. And I was baptized in St. Rita's Parish, actually where my parents were married. But then when I was 2 years old, we moved up to St. Patrick's Parish. And I went to grammar school there. And I became an altar server when I was in the 4th grade. It's very interesting how I became an altar server. I really joined the choir. And after 2 or 3 times, the choir master, she said to me, the organist, she said, "Jamie, why don't you join the altar service?" So I think she was trying to tell me something, another way that God works through people. And so I joined the altar service, and I got very much involved in helping the priests and the nuns. I would, every winter, every spring and fall, I would go into the convent and help them pull up their rugs and change the furniture. I was always involved with the altar service and the priest and doing things around the parish and in the church. So it was always there in my mind. And then when I went to high school, I continued going to church. And I have to say, my family, they weren't that faithful. I mean, you know, we went Christmas and Easter, but they didn't go every Sunday. Even, you know, I'm the middle of 3 children. I have an older brother and a younger sister. They didn't go to church every Sunday after grammar school, but I did. High school, I went to church every Sunday. I got dressed on Sunday. I was an altar server in high school. Then I moved down to, we moved from where we were in high school, and I then moved down back to St. Rita's Parish, and I got involved with Msgr Casado. He got there in 1972.
As a newly ordained.
As a newly ordained. And so I got to know him, and they had a confraternity program for high school students, and I would go down and help with confraternity, and got involved in retreats. Then he asked me to become a lector, and I, believe it or not, when I was a kid, I was shy.
Oh, come on.
To say I had to get up and speak in front of people, I was a nervous wreck. You know, in school, when you had to get up in front of the classroom, I would shake. And, you know, family, you know, issues, my parents got divorced. It was hard for me to leave and to go into the seminary. And, you know, my mother and sister were at home, so I was helping at home when I graduated the culinary, you know, making some money, helping to support my family a little bit. So the priesthood was always on hold, but always involved in the church. And that's when my mother and my sister started to come back to church. Then my mother started going every Sunday again, and in fact, she would come right here to Our Lady of Mount Carmel for novena every Monday night. I guess she was praying for me to become a priest. And so I was always involved. And then, I guess in my late 20s, 28, that's when people started to ask me, did you ever think of becoming a priest?
Yeah, you know, they say that that's the big problem. We don't invite people anymore.
Yes.
And someone did come up to you and say
And
that.
of course, you know, Msgr Casado and I, we talked a lot about possibly going to the priest. But then it was Msgr Bennett, Austin Bennett. He would come to St. Rita's to celebrate Mass. He did it for almost 50 years. And he would come in his way, you know, very direct. So Jamie, when are you gonna stop cooking and become a priest? And, you know, and then it started to resonate in my mind. And by that time, my sister just got married. And right after she got married and moved out of the house, then I was 30 and I entered the seminary. I said, you know, I think God is calling me. And I think if I don't answer the call now, I'll always maybe regret it. And I entered at 30, and I was ordained at 36.
What was it that finally clicked? I mean, you had all of these, you had Msgr Bennett asking you and Msgr Casado suggesting it. And what do you think was the final thing that just pushed you in and said, all right, let's give this a shot?
Well, I mean, in my 20s and, you know, all during those years, I started working. I enjoyed working. We would go out partying afterwards, you know, going out for drinks after work, and, you know, I dated. I loved to travel. I was making good money at that time. I was making good money when I finally finished. But through all of that, there was always something, I always had to go back to church. I was more interested in, you know, doing the retreats and doing the liturgies and lecturing and being there on Sunday. And it was always there. And I said, you know, it seems to be more fulfilling for me to be in the church and serving people. I enjoy doing things and the crowds of people coming out and serving them and doing things that made people happy and felt good about their faith and doing social events. I enjoy that more than partying and I still like to travel. I still like, you know, to enjoy having a good time. But I felt the Lord was calling me to that.
How about your friends? I mean, the other teachers at Erasmus, you know, when they found out that you were thinking about going into the seminary, did they say you were crazy?
Well, I mean, I have to say, telling my boss, my immediate supervisor at Erasmus, when I told, he stood there with his mouth open, seminary, you know, and then there was this girl I used to date, and you're leaving me for the church?
That's gotta be a letdown.
Right.
You know?
But I have to say, anyone that I knew, my friends and my family, the reaction was all the same. I thought you'd do it sooner.
Yeah.
That was their reaction.
So your family then was supportive of the decision?
Very supportive. Yeah. I mean, their reaction was, I'll never forget the time, it was after Mass on a Sunday. My mother, on Sunday, my house, my mother would cook, and I would bring all the people from church. Well, I have a few people, I have about 8 people coming over, the choir's coming over, people I work with. My house was the place where the church people came. Christmas, I would have parties, and that's where I use my cooking. I make all the hors d'oeuvres, and we go on ski trips. I make all the pastries and cookies, and I bring them on the bus. So, but we went home, and I said, today's the day. So Msgr Casado came with me. We had dinner with my family, and I told them, and they were like, oh, we thought you'd do it sooner. We're not surprised, you know. So it was a nice thing. It was really
What do you remember about Ordination Day itself?
Ordination Day, I remember many things. I remember first getting up in the morning And in fact, I was right here at Mount Carmel because I did help here when I was in the seminary. I lived here during my seminary days. And it's ironic that I'm back here. But I remember getting up here and I remember going to St. James. And I said to myself, is this really happening? I never, becoming a priest. I never thought God was calling me, I knew God was calling me. I never thought I'd have the ability and to do it. And then I have to say that day, during the ordination and seeing all my family and friends there, encouraging me, so happy. And I said, here I am, doing this. Yes, I want to serve God's people, but that they were happy for me and I made them happy. And that made me feel good also. And of course, I remember my opening up my assignment, St. Patrick's, and I said, Monsignor O'Toole. And I remember Monsignor Casado said, oh, he's tough. And I said, oh my God, what am I doing? And he turned out to be one of my best friends. He was a mentor. And of course, he just passed. And I went back to Ireland to do his funeral, his family. And that was so rewarding for me. So, I remember many moments of that day.
We're going to take another quick break. We're here with Monsignor Jamie on the north side of Williamsburg. Stay where you are. We're coming right back. Welcome back to On the Block. I'm Ed. This is Monsignor Jamie. We just got past ordination. You got your first assignment at St. Patrick's, and that turned into a love fest, didn't it, between you and the people there? And you have a great relationship with Bay Ridge even to this day.
Yes, I was there just the other night for the 911 memorial, and it's an annual event. But I go back for many different events, and some sad events, some funerals, but a lot of happy occasions, weddings, baptisms, and in the restaurants.
Now, what are some of the things that you can take from your Maître d' days, your culinary days, that you can apply to your ministry as a priest? What are some of the same qualities that overlap a little bit?
Well, being in the hospitality industry, and that's what I was in the front of the house, Maître d', being with people, serving people. I think that's the number one issue today. A lot of people don't feel welcome at church. They come in, no one says good morning. There's really nothing for them to feel a part of. And I think using my hospitality skills is number one. You got to be open to people. You got to be friendly with people. You have to, say hello to people and make them feel that, you matter, that, you're present. We recognize you. And I think that's the first thing, my people skills. The other thing is my cooking skills, using food as a means of bringing people together. Everyone loves to eat. So you have events in the parish, like I said about St. Patrick's, the Taste of the Ridge, using them as fundraisers. Even now, being the Vicar for Development, running the dinners and the concerts and the golf outings, all of the skills that I learned in hospitality, all of my management skills, going to Baruch and my business skills, and just serving people, being with people, has helped me tremendously. And also, in a restaurant, you meet all kinds of people. In the church, you meet all kinds of people. And you have to meet each person where they're at and welcome them in.
Now, this is a place over here, Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish. It's a changing neighborhood. It's a lot of new kinds of people coming in. They talk about the booming north side here. So that hospitality must play a special part in how you reach out to some of the newcomers here.
Tremendously. This neighborhood, I was here, as I said, from when Monsignor Casado, I helped out here.
A big difference between them.
Oh, when you were here, to go to a restaurant, you went to Kellogg's Diner, or you had to go over the bridge to Long Island City. There were no restaurants here. There was nothing. Bamonte's, of course, and Crisci's, right? There was Fortunato's Brothers, but that was it. There was really nothing here. And they were mostly all factories, and it was a different world then. Now, the neighborhood, first of all, it has the largest number of hipsters in the United States. It has the largest number of young people living on trust funds. So they're here all during the day. A lot of them don't work, a lot of them do work, but a lot of them are present during the day. And I look at this neighborhood and I look around and I see all these new buildings going up, beautiful buildings, hotels and restaurants. And the church, you come here, it's dreary, it's dark, the building, the concrete's falling apart. And it's like saying, we're dying and you're rising. We're here to stay. We were here and we'll be here for another 100 years. And that's why I feel the church, it's so important for the church to be a place where people can come to again and be the center of this community. That's why, I'm renovating, making it bright, making it welcoming by putting gardens outside and leaving the doors open all day long. And there are a lot of young people that come to church. We have a 6 o'clock Mass on a Sunday night, and I moved it from here to Metropolitan Avenue to Annunciation Church, which I'm also the administrator
Right,
of. It's more present. And we're renovating that church as well. But I want to use that more to welcome all of the new people, the hipsters. Not forgetting the people who are here, the pillars of the church. And the traditions of the feast, and the feast has kept this parish alive, as it did when they tore the original church down when they built the expressway in the late 50s. They built this church thinking it would not survive, and they can turn it into a parish hall, a community center, because we had so many churches around us. And the feast kept this parish alive. Today, it's the same thing. The feast keeps the parish alive because on Sunday, we don't have that many people. The collections aren't that great. So the feast really is supporting the parish. But now I want to use the feast. I want to use the skills that I have to outreach to the new people and have them come in to do different things, maybe doing cooking classes. We have a kitchen here that we're doing over, and we're feeding the homeless in the neighborhood. We have a food truck that goes around to 5 different areas, and we feed the homeless and the poor, and they're preparing the food here. So I want to use that kitchen now to maybe do cooking classes, maybe use it for young kids that are at risk, teach them a vocation. Once again, using my skills to try to outreach to this community.
This is a year of vocations here in this diocese. What do you say to a young person if he comes up to you and says, Monsignor, I was thinking about becoming a priest?
I would say 2 things. It's a wonderful life. You meet the best people, and you don't have to give up your life to become a priest. You can be a better person, and you can enjoy life even more if you get involved with people. You can be with people. We're diocesan priests. We're called to live among the people. And the more we live among the people and be with them in good times and in bad, enjoy life, you can be a great priest, and you can be a happy priest.
Monsignor, we're out of time. We could keep on going. I know, the human tsunami here, as you say. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
Thank you, Ed.
And thank you for being with us today. I hope you'll join us again here on The Block.